So this is a continuation of this morning, this evening, so soon annotations. Here's page 170 and 171. And we're starting off the annotations with this interesting quote right here on 170. It says, this is his director talking to the narrator. It says, "I am a French director who has never seen your country. I have never done you any harm except perhaps historically. I mean because I'm white, but I cannot be blamed for that." And I think that quote really creates an interesting contrast between these two characters because one character is saying that he's white, but he can't be blamed for his ancestors' misdoings. But our character has been living his whole life pretty much as a consequence of his ancestors' past. So he's living in the shadows of slaves, while this guy says that he can't really be tied to his past. So I thought that was a really interesting character contrast. Um, let's see, that was pretty much the most interesting thing on this page. The next page, let's see, we get the theme of, or I circled this quote, "Will you teach him never to tell the truth to anyone?" And he moved behind his desk and looked at me as though behind a barricade. So just more on the theme of like, how is the narrator going to raise his son? Is he going to keep him in the dark about his past, about his experience in America, or is he just gonna hide him from that? We get more nightmare imagery in the last paragraph right here when it says, "I wonder if he knows what the nightmare at the bottom of my mind as I played the role of Chico." So basically, just more nightmare theme imagery right there. The narrator, we find out about his dad. He pities and hates his father at the same time. He pities him for what he saw, what he had to go through, but he also hates him because he pretty much dragged him into this life. Let's see. So this is page 172, and 173. And right off the bat, I circled the quote, "I knew only that I was his son. However, he had loved me. Whatever he had borne, I was his son, was despised. Even he had lived. He could not have done nothing to prevent it, nothing to protect me." So basically, he was talking about how we get some hyperbation here, the Yoda talk, where even had he lived, but more importantly, basically how his father didn't really prepare him for what he was going to go through, and he kind of has resentment towards his father for all the things that happened to him as a result of him being black. So a really important relationship there with his father that he doesn't really want to repeat with Paul, his son. Let's see. I thought the summer I spent in Alabama when her mother died, I stopped eating away fun. Let's see. Oh, this important quote at the bottom. It says, "White friends got it for me. For a long time in the South, we all depended on the kindness of white friends. I take out a handkerchief and wipe my face, but this man didn't like me, I guess. I didn't seem grateful enough, wasn't enough like my father." So his father got him this job, and he was basically working for this white man. And what I got from the quote was that he didn't really, suck up to the white guy too much, and the white guy kind of took it as being not grateful, even though I'm sure he was grateful to get the job, but like he wasn't overly grateful. And I feel like it's kind of conveying that black people have to be overly grateful to prove that they're grateful. So they have to jump through all these different hoops, the narrator saying, basically to please the white man. On 173, I put the quote, "And the police car comes up behind you. The cop says, 'Hey boy, come on over here.' So you go on over. He says, 'Boy, I believe you're drunk.' And you see, if you say no, sir, he'll beat you because you're calling him a liar. And if you say anything else, unless it's something to make him laugh, he'll take you and beat you just for fun. The trick is to think of some way for them to have their fun without beating you up." So this is the perspective of the narrator, and I feel like it's kind of representing how a lot of black people in America feel. The story is basically saying that they have to find the happy medium between not not pissing off the police, like the white man, and also like kind of like he has to be like cunning. He has to be like he has to rely on his humor, and it kind of sucks. Like he has to just all these extra hoops that he has to jump through just because he's black, and he has so much resentment towards that. Um, let's see, they knew how to keep the white folks happy, and it was easy. You just had to keep them feel they were God's favor to the universe. So he's basically just talking about how white people feel, and how he even says in America that's usually what it means to have a white friend. You pity the poor because he was born believing the world's a great place to be, and you know it's not, and you can see that he's going to have a terrible time getting used to this idea if he ever gets used to it. So they kind of play to their egos, like they have to make them think that they're constantly in control and that the world's a great place, when really to black people it's not. And they feel like white people can never truly understand that. So here's page 174 and 175. On this page, let's see, he describes, it says, maybe then you can have it if you live a better life, a real life, because you had to fight so hard to get it anyway, you know, from the mad dog who held it in his teeth. So I thought that was a really good metaphor, just about how he has to fight to have a decent life. And I just thought how the mad dog who held it with his teeth was really good imagery to portray that. I poured more nightmare imagery right here in the middle, just this repeating nightmare, nightmare, nightmare. Let's see. We get an interesting simile here. He has a married daughter who lives in England, and he rarely speaks of her. He is like a man who has learned to live on what is left of an enormous fortune. When he's talking about Vidal, the whatchamacallit, the director. Let's see. Okay, then we get this interesting backstory about his sister, who basically was in a car with her friends, and they didn't believe that the police officers pulled them over because they thought she was white, and they didn't really believe her when she said she wasn't, so they made her take her clothes off, and then the context of the story leads us to believe that she was raped, and that her boyfriend really couldn't do anything, and basically after that they split apart. And I feel like it talks about how they dehumanized him, and it made me think back to the story about Jesse, the story, the one that we read previously about the racism and how they dehumanized the black guy that they were killing by cutting his genitals off. And I was thinking about this here, and how it says that they couldn't feel like men unless they pretty much dehumanized other men. And I guess the black people became a scapegoat in that sense. Those are the people that they chose that they needed to dehumanize to feel more manly. And then just more of the narrator saying, I don't want to raise Paul in that situation. Let's see. And that's pretty much the biggest things on this page. We get some personification of history. When it says, perhaps it's history's fault, I suppose it must be history which always arranges to bill a civilization at the very instant that it's least prepared to pay. So I feel like he's talking about Africans. Like, they basically took them from their country, and it's like the least convenient time, and they just used them for their insecurities. They had to, or at least now they have to, demasculate them in order to feel like men at the least convenient time. So this is 176 and 177. Let's see. Oh, he had to reassure himself of the reality of Paris before he left, pretty much. Like, he wanted to make sure that this place was real, because it's almost too good to be true. Like, there's no racism here, at least in the sense that there is in the U.S. And basically, he just has to he has to observe everything to just prove to himself that it's real, so that he doesn't lose it when he goes over there. Let's see. I circled the quote, you do not know all the things love cannot do, but he smiles. Love will teach you that. I thought that was a really interesting quote. It says, you are a good boy, Chico, he says. I laugh. You believe in love. You do not know all the things love cannot do, but he smiles. Love will teach you that. So I was thinking, what are the things that love can't do? And the only thing I could really think of was when the narrator was talking about how circumstances determine our relationships, and basically how he can find love in France with a white woman, but back in the States he couldn't. So I was just thinking that even love couldn't transcend things like hate and racism. At least that's what I'm getting from this guy right here. the director. So then we get this nightlife scene where they go out, Vidal and the narrator, and I feel like it's like this club full of like wannabes and like washed up people, and there was like a celebrity that had happened to like wander in there at one time, which made it famous, so they could start like overcharging drinks and stuff. And basically, he describes that they are the most famous people now in the room when they walk in, and everybody knows that, and they're like paying them attention. Um, you got this interesting imagery right here. I am told the populace is yet more carnivorous than it is here. So in that paragraph, it says, "I thought," says Vidal, with a malicious little smile, "that your farewell to Paris could not be complete without a brief exposure to the perils of fame. Perhaps it will prepare." So I basically thought that Americans, I think portrayed Americans as more savage than French people. Maybe it was a euphemism for saying more racist. Um, we got this interesting quote where, let's see, he talks about how being famous is almost as bad as being hated, which is really interesting. I guess he didn't like all the attention, or it didn't make him feel good. Perhaps relating back to how Vidal was talking about how his success stemmed from his feelings of being suppressed in America. 178, 179. So let's see. This is the page where he meets. He basically sees these American teenagers or American college students, and they catch his attention, and they come on over, and the girl it makes the story. The narrator makes sure to tell us that the girl isn't really flirting with him. He says she is honest, forthright walk entirely. Unlike the calculated pelvic workout by means of which most women get about, she is small but sturdy. So basically saying she's just walking over, I guess, as a friend, not like as a flirt. Let's see. I guess, he says we weren't about to let you get up. So see, he's really famous for the film that he did, that it got back to the States, and that these people, these teenagers, black teenagers or black college students really look up to him. So that's what we learn on those pages. Here's 180 and 170, 180 and 181. And okay, on this page, let's see, we find out he's a role model for black Americans. They want to buy him a drink, so that really shows how much they really look up to him. Let's see. They're just telling him how much they love his movie and how much they mean to him, or that he means to them. Even, let's see, Vidal doesn't. Okay, so then at this part, "You tore up a lot of people," Tally says cryptically, and he and Ruth laughed. Vidal does not know, but I do. The Tally is probably referring to white people. So I guess his film even got to white people. Either, I didn't know if that meant like he actually made white people cry, or if it made them kind of mad. I think it got them kind of mad. It was kind of pointing out their way of life in America. Let's see. And they just have a good time. They're going out, they're partying pretty much. Upset people walking around. There's, Ruth says, a couple of tours around black people. Okay, so they were talking about how black people in America pretty much couldn't have this much fun, so they need to take advantage of it while they're over here in Europe. And they were talking about all the different places that they've been. And that people back home probably would not have as much fun as they are right now. Let's see. Then at the bottom right here, I wrote, "Europeans don't understand the racism." So it says in this paragraph, Vidal smiles delighted. "It seems extraordinarily infantile behavior, even for Americans, from whom I must say I've never experienced blah, blah, blah. Americans, I'm an old man now. I suppose I would never. There is something very nice about them, something very winning, but they seem so ignorant of life. Perhaps it is strange, but the only people from your country with whom I have ever made contact are black people. Like my good friend, my discovery here." And he slaps me on the shoulder. So just basically how Europeans would never do something, would never act as Americans do in America. And basically he doesn't understand why everyone's so racist, because they don't have the same things there. So it's a nice contrast between Europe and the U.S. So here's 182 and 183. Let's see. More about white people don't know what suffering is. I circled the quote, "But most Americans do not yet know what anguish is." So just basically the distinction there between white and black people and how black people understand the suffering but white people can't. And I guess that's why they don't acknowledge it, because they don't completely understand it. Um, let's see. So the most important part here that I got, it says, Paris seems like a figment of imagination because it is so good. If he leaves, will he see it again? So just more of like him pretty much expressing his gratitude to live in Paris, and like just uh, just examining it and how different it is from the U.S. On page 183, the musician, one of the musician college students that he met, starts singing, "Preach the word, preach the word, preach the word. If I never see you anymore, preach the word, preach the word." So I think that song basically was talking about how they need to keep on speaking up against racism, um, just like the narrator has been in his movies, I guess, which were so provocative in the States. Um, let's see, and we get a song on the bottom of the page where it says, "Testify, testify. If I never see you anymore, testify, testify." So more of that fight the racism imagery. Um, let's see, Pete was not there. None of us were the first time this song was needed. So when he talks about this song, how none of them were there when this song was first created, but it's still needed today. So it's like things haven't really changed in America. And that's it for those pages, 184, 185. So let's see, we get more social groupthink themes here, where it's talking about, let's see, Ruth and Telly look curiously, explain Bruno, now that I've called him over, I feel somewhat uneasy. I realize that I do not know what he is doing now or will get along with any of these people. And I can see in his eyes that he's delighted to be in the presence of two young girls. So it's talking about how this boxer, this North African boxer, is really used to like people not getting along with him just because he's North African. And I guess there's some conflict going on with North Africans and like the people living in France, and basically he's used to people not getting along with him. So more this social group thing, because the same thing was happening in America with black people, and that's how the narrator used to feel. But now coming to France, he doesn't really feel that anymore. Let's see. Very nice and preps. I'm sorry that he called me over, but I didn't want to snub him. So really, why does he not like that? So we find out that Vidal and the North African guy don't really get along, and it's kind of reminiscent of what's going on in America. So we kind of see that the narrator hasn't completely escaped what's going on in America at this point. There is some sort of like discrimination or racism going on in France, but it's not really directed towards the narrator. But he's kind of like, for the first time, he's like an observer outside of it. On the next page, we find out that the North African guy is from Tunis, and he's pretty proud about it. And the people from the states that are from college don't really care where he's from. They just see him as a person. At least there. Blacks don't know about Africa. I put that because he says he laughs. Africa is a big place, very big. There are many countries in Africa, many. He looks briefly at Vidal, different kinds of people, many colonies. So let's see, he's like educating the university students about Africa who are black. So I thought that was kind of ironic. They're kind of disconnected from the culture that they came from because of the white man. Let's see. So we find out even Africa has problems like racism and stuff like that. So all this stuff exists throughout the world, not just in America, just in different forms. Here is 186 and 187. So we get the... oh, no. I already did that. Wait, did I? Oh, I think... let's see. White versus European. Oh, no. 186 and 187, yeah. Let's see. Okay, so we get another theme of groupthink. It says, "Thank you, Mamil," he says softly, and his tongue flicks briefly over his lower lip, and he smiles. He is very moved. People are not often nice to him. So just more of this North African guy getting all these, like he's getting all these nice feelings that he's not used to getting. And just like that really interesting contrast and like comparison between America and Europe, how like it's very similar in the fact that there's racism, but just different groups that don't like each other. So yeah, we get that nice contrast of white versus European countries. I thought it was really interesting when they went in the bar and they described everyone in the bar, all the different nationalities, like the Spanishes, the Swedes, the Greeks, and in America it would just be like a bunch of white people, but like here all their like ethnicities are kind of like they're like drawn out, they're given to us. So I guess it kind of shows that like there is no white and black in Paris. There's like just different ethnic groups, and although they have the same skin, they're different, and it's kind of recognized there. Here in America, it's not really recognized. 187. The trouble is, I know that Buna steals. So in this one, Buna, the North African guy, is accused of stealing, and the narrator has this inner conflict because he knows that he steals, but he's not sure if he stole this person's $10, and it's such a trivial amount. But the narrator goes through such a dilemma. He tries hard to keep his friend's reputation good. I don't know. I think it's really interesting how he's put in this outside perspective of like back in the States, like someone like Buna who's black would instantly be accused and like not even question like he did take the money. But here, like it's interesting because the narrator gets this outside perspective. He himself isn't being accused, but he's seeing another person, and he's thinking like he's kind of feeling like he doesn't want to be discriminatory or anything. So I feel like it puts him in an interesting position. So that was the biggest things on those pages. Here is 188 and 189. And on this page, the biggest thing here was just so much controversy over this. Like the narrator keeps going back and forth. Like, should I tell him I know he didn't steal, or should I do this because I know he does steal? So he keeps going back and forth. He lets Ada, the girl that the money was stolen from, know that it's not her fault. But let's see. Basically, this whole conflict is bringing back like the narrator is seeing similar things happening here that happened in America, like someone being accused and thought that they did something because of their race. Kind of like Vidal, the Frenchman, is the one who's kind of like agreeing that, yeah, he probably stole, and the other guy, just because he's like North African, like we're just seeing that same kind of situation here, and it just reminds the narrator of what's to come. Almost like foreshadowing of what he should expect when going back to America. Let's see. But I do not know for which reason. Perhaps it's easy to see a boy who looks like a Buddha with his... So yeah, same thing. Narrator questions his perceived notions of Buddha. So yeah, just bringing it back to those themes right there that you see in America. 190 and 191. Let's see. Similar to the U.S. situation, it says, I think it's that Frenchman who say, I'm a thief. They think we all are thieves. His eyes are bright and bitter. He looks over my shoulder. They have all come out of the club now. So basically, same situation going on in America. Instead of French people, it's white people. Instead of this African guy, it's black people. Let's see. He pulls the race card. Why she blame me? Because I come from Africa. So more of that racism there. He puts the narrator in a position to lie about him because he's saying, I don't steal, but the narrator knows that he does steal. So we see if the narrator stands up for him, which he kind of does. Let's see. That's pretty much the biggest things on these pages. Same thing just happened. Oh, I don't think I will. I say then I hope you won't. So yeah, that's the biggest things on this page. Let's see. And here's the last two pages, 192 and 193. And we end the story. It says, for what things do... It says, so this interesting line was said to the narrator by Vidal. Do not forget me, Chico, he says. You must come back and see us one of these days. Many of us depend on you for many things. And I knew that was an important line, but I'm still trying to figure out for what things is he needed for. Let's see. And then at the end, we just find the narrator waking his son up. And his son is like, I don't know yet, when the narrator asks him how he's feeling. So I think that just like emphasizes how much of a blank canvas Paul is. He doesn't really know about anything. he doesn't have any preconceptions of the world, and he's just open and he's ready to kind of like take everything in. Um, and let's see, that's pretty much the story. And then he takes him and he's going to the new world, which he knows he's going to see a lot of the same things that he just saw with all of his friends that he has. So that's pretty much the second part of the story.